The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Like my dad says, beer has water, so I'm good. I just noticed I've been drinking water all week. I haven't drank anything else. And Tullio's talking about drinking some cherry Coke Zero.
Cherry. It's so good.
He was downing that Coke right before this started, and I was like, "What is that?"
Decadent little thing. It's like, wow, cherry zero.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Just how fast will AI be changing things? The CEO of one of the leading AI companies just released an essay, and I think some of the predicted advances and how fast they will happen will shock people. That's what we're talking about today. I'm Steven Sakach here again with Tullio Siragusa and Ash Maher. Hey, guys. All right. So it's October 2024. The CEO of Anthropic, Dario Amodei, just released an essay about AI. So Anthropic runs Claude, which is one of the main competitors to ChatGPT. It has some big backers behind it. The essay is titled Machines of Loving Grace, which is quoting a poem talking about technology and humanity where humans return to nature and are watched over by machines of loving grace. So Dario writes, I think that most people are underestimating just how radical the upside of AI could be, just as I think most people are underestimating how bad the risk could be. So let's set the stage here. What he's going to base his predictions on is the moment when we reach AGI, or powerful AI, which he says, I think could come as early as 2026. Though there are also some ways it could take much longer, he says. But for the purposes of this essay, I'd like to put these issues aside, assume it will come reasonably soon, and focus on what happens in the 5 to 10 years after that. So once we have AGI, or this powerful AI, he calls, what happens in the 5 to 10 years after that, which he calls those 5 to 10 years a compressed 21st century. Basically, things that in the regular course of evolution could take a century will be compressed into 5 to 10 years, he thinks. So you're kind of 10xing things. He says, quote, if all goes really well, if all of this really does happen over the next 5 to 10 years, the defeat of most diseases, the growth of biological and cognitive freedom, the lifting of billions of people out of poverty to share in the new technologies, a renaissance of liberal democracy and human rights. I suspect everyone watching it will be surprised by the effect it has on them. And I don't just mean the experience of personally benefiting from all the new technologies, although that will certainly be amazing. I mean the experience of watching a long-held set of ideals materialize in front of us all at once. I think many will literally be moved to tears by it. He adds, it's a thing of transcendent beauty. We have an opportunity to play some small role in making it real. So I want to dive into some of the prediction he talks about today because they're truly massive. Tullio, he first talks about biology and health. What does he say here?
Well, he's got an interesting prediction along the lines of the compressed timeline when things would happen a lot faster. In the next 7 to 12 years from now, basically, we would achieve prevention of or treatment of nearly all natural infectious disease. Now, that's a pretty big statement. But, you know, with AI being able to do many, many permutations simultaneously, it's very possible. And then also the elimination of most cancers. Now, that would be amazing. I mean, the death rate of cancer has actually been dropping about 2% every year for the past decade, which is good news. But we could, with the right discoveries, accelerate this decline where it could potentially eliminate most cancers in the 21st century altogether. So that would be a tremendous win. And even the prevention of Alzheimer's, some of us have lost our loved ones, parents, to some of these diseases, including cancer and Alzheimer's. So It'd be like kind of cool not to have your kids go through that with maybe us or their grandparents or what have you. And then doubling the human lifespan. That's a pretty big prediction. Not necessarily related to, violence. I don't think this will stop violence, but it would certainly, biologically speaking, with the right discoveries, could double human lifespan. And also the essay describes several other big achievements in terms of health overall.
Yeah, those are all huge, insanely huge. And he's talking really 7 to 12 years from now is what he thinks. Ash,
live another 12 years.
Right.
Ash, Tullio mentioned the doubling of the life expectancy. What did he say there specifically?
Yeah, no, of course. So Dario was saying that this is a quote from the essay, this might seem radical, but life expectancy increased almost 2 times in the 20th century from 40 years to 75. So it's on trend that the compressed 21st would double it again to 150. That is crazy. Assuming we don't have any new diseases and technologies and radiations, killing us, if we could get through all those issues, it's pretty profound. Now he adds, it is worth looking at this list and reflecting on how different the world will be if all of it is achieved 7 to 12 years from now, which would be in line with an aggressive AI timeline. Sounds like a Marvel movie. It goes without saying that it would be an unimaginable humanitarian triumph, the elimination all at once of most of the scourges that have haunted humanity for a millennia.
Now, I'm curious because I can see biologically speaking, physically speaking, these improvements. I think once the code is cracked, there's definitely a lot of things that could be done. But we've also seen an acceleration of mental illness as well. So it's like on one end, you improve the physical health. On the other hand, mental illness is at an all-time high and it's accelerating. Any hope for that? What does he say about that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, but I'm still kind of sitting here pondering, like, what are my life goals at age 120 or 130? What should I be planning? Ash, what are we going to be doing? What mountain are we going to be climbing?
I 100%, right? You can only imagine. If AI goes the way it's supposed to, and it is actually making our lives that much easier, we're eliminating stress factors and cortisol and things like that, it makes sense that we can potentially live a lot longer. If we're able to combat illnesses in ways that we never were able to and extend our lives, again, it all makes sense, assuming the variables of disease and technology doesn't end up taking us out to this point. If we're to transition and talk about mental health and mental illness, a lot of these technologies and the amount of screen time and the fact that as we're integrating this into our lives, could that affect us in a way that...
Yeah, and I think one of the things he's talking about too is not just us doing like the testing, it's AI like doing the testing, like the iterations, constant iterations, like the AI robot biologist or something, where it's just speeding up and doing all these and doing multiple iterations, at once, so that just the time span goes really fast. And also just looking at the amount of data that we have right now on things and finding patterns that we just haven't seen yet. Because that's one of the problems we have, is just we've got data on things, but we just haven't seen the patterns and put it together. So I think he's saying bringing all that together is why this could just accelerate very rapidly. But yeah, Tullio, you brought up the mental health side of things. So he does go into this quite a bit, and I don't know where I net out at this, but let's talk about some of what he says. So after biology, he talks about AI's potential isn't just limited to physical health. It could also revolutionize neuroscience and mental health, areas where millions of people suffer from conditions like depression, anxiety, PTSD, even schizophrenia. He says AI could dramatically accelerate our understanding of the brain, leading to far more effective treatments for these conditions. He says he thinks we would, quote, be on track to lead the cure or prevention of most mental illness in the next 100 years, even if AI was not involved, and thus might reasonably be completed in 5 to 10 AI accelerated years. And so he says, concretely, my guess, what will happen is something like this. Mental illness can probably be cured. I'm not an expert in psychiatric disease. He says, my time in neuroscience was spent building probes to study small groups of neurons. But it's my guess that diseases like PTSD, depression, schizophrenia, addiction, etc., can be figured out and very effectively treated via some combination of the above, of the four directions above. The answer is likely to be some combination of something went wrong biochemically, although it could be very complex, and something went wrong with the neural network at a high level. That is, it's a system science question, though that doesn't gainsay the impact of behavioral interventions discussed above. Tools for measurement and intervention, especially in live humans, seem likely to lead to rapid iteration and progress.
Steve, question. Do you think humans would like to engage with a robot when it comes to, like, do you and I'm sure there's sides here. I know, Tullio, we've talked about this previously as well, that, you know, the idea of a robot understanding our needs maybe at a higher level. But do you think humans would adopt that and be open to wanting to have that communication with a robot, knowing that could potentially solve its problem, or would be fighting back?
I think so, but I am a little skeptical on just how effective it could be in that, because people have they've got deep-rooted trauma, and we've talked about shadow work that you've got to do on this, and it's work. And even if you were sitting with a therapist, maybe the greatest in the world, how effective are they going to be? So how effective could the greatest in the world, AI therapist? I don't know. I know he mentions talking about like a life coach of AI with you all the time, where it's boy, it almost sounds like the movie The Circle, but where it's just it's with you all the time, and it's listening to everything you're saying, and understanding all that, and then maybe coaching you on how you could have done things better or improved. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know on this one with him. I think he's taking a very
aspirational view.
Yeah, it's aspirational, but it's also just very physical, not sort of the interior, mental side of things. It's just very, not the metaphysical, but the physical side of things that he's talking on it curing. So I'm a little skeptical about that, because just we aren't very good at it now. And so, yeah, how's AI going to really come to play there?
Yeah, and I was going to say too, I think rephrasing of the question, it's not so much would people want to deal with robots, but would the robot be able to inspire the person to compel them to take the action they need to take in ways that humans can inspire humans to take action, right? Will a robot be able to engineer inspiration? And I think that's the more important question than is someone.
Yeah, I don't see it. But maybe, maybe because it can be very powerful in how it makes you, react to things, I'm sure. But I don't see it, because sometimes you need that moment where you're just, you've hit the wall, or you've gone rock bottom, or you get that. Where do you get those moments of sudden clarity in your life? And how is it going to help you get that? I just don't see it, unless it says, hey, I want you to go take psychedelics or something.
Right.
In some fashion like that, where it might, prescribe something like that to do what it can't do, I guess. But
yeah, I think on the physical side of things, I see a lot of what is being said as possible, especially if we advance nanotechnology and biobots that can deliver some of these things, where it could make a correction at the cell level or deliver a specific nutrient or what have you, from a nanotechnology point of view. I think there's a lot that can be done with discoveries that can actually address a lot of the physical ailments. The mental ailments, that's I don't know, that's a tough one. Like what motivates people. That's like a little bit beyond physical. It's like, how do you treat consciousness? I don't think the AI bot's going to be able to do that. Maybe they could coach and listen better, be more empathetic, but I just think some things are left for humans to
Yeah,
share
sometimes the
experience.
problem is like your
Yeah,
parents didn't say "I love you" to you or something,
right,
and maybe
right.
you need that. And how's a robot or the AI going to fill that
But then again,
need?
if everybody's super healthy, maybe everybody's super happy too. So
Yeah,
There's
it's
so
hard,
many factors. That's
right?
right.
It's
Yeah.
like, well, maybe if nobody was in pain and the people live longer, they wouldn't be so like in a rush, like to get so much done because life's almost ending. Maybe they'd just be happier and there'd be less mental illness. Who knows? It'd be interesting to see how these two play together, So
yeah. Hey Ash, there was only one actual mention of love in the whole essay. What
Yeah.
what did he say here?
So Dario said human baseline experience can be much better. Take one step further. Many people have experienced extraordinary moments of revelation, creative inspiration, compassion, fulfillment, transcendence, love, beauty, and meditative peace. The character and frequency of these experiences differs greatly from person to person and within the same person at different times, and can also sometimes be triggered by various drugs, although often with side effects. All of this suggests that the space of what is possible to experience is very broad, to Tullio's point, and that larger fraction of people's lives can consist of these extraordinary moments. So if people are happy and experiencing more extraordinary moments with the help of AI, then can we transition ourselves to a place of more love? I
Yeah, I mean,
believe
it's a good point. Yeah, like, and if you have like AI helping you with like a gratitude practice or something, that's could just be very effective at that, or you could just have wider number of people experiencing, these bliss moments. But yeah, I don't know. It's not an easy one for me in his argument, the way that he's taking to kind of wrap my head around that being solved in like 12 years from now. That one I'm very skeptical on.
We talk about 10 to 12 years and the advancement of technology at the rate that it goes, right? Before AI, there was a prediction, I think they said from 2016 to 2022, there was going to be a 20,000%. I mean, this is just a statistic that I remember back in the day that there was going to be this increase. And I think we completely surpassed whatever the expectation was going to be for advancement in technology, because we were making that prediction based on prior AI. So I can only imagine we've already surpassed that. And to its point, he's trying to make that if we can experience more of these extraordinary moments because we have the time to do so, that we may actually get to a place of that enlightenment faster and achieve that with the help of the AI. But that's ultimately what it's doing. It's still not helping us understand our consciousness. And I don't think it's ever going to be able to do that or inspire it. It's essentially giving us back our time to be able to reflect and have these moments, whether it's in meditative practice, creative practices, and so on. He's saying that time you get back to experience more extraordinary moments could be the groundbreaking or most impactful element of the AI working with us together. So that's my interpretation. Now, in terms of being skeptical, again, it says 10 to 12 years. I'm already thinking, oh my goodness, what is this going to look like next year? What is this going to look like in 2 or 3 years? Right? So 10 years, I'm kind of already thinking at the speed in which we're advancing. Could this be pushing us towards more of a utopian society? Like by that time, who knows? Right?
And I think the dark side of this, and he sort of mentioned it, and we'll get into it a little bit later, is there's a good case to be made for, like any new advancement like this, we don't know what the problems are, but there's a good case to be made for more problems relating around the lack of meaning as AI advances.
Yeah, because as I'm listening, I'm thinking to myself, if I have a way to, let's say, whatever you're dealing with, trauma, sometimes those things, they also shape you and help you grow, right? Most people who overcome certain things, they become a force to be reckoned with. Right. But if I have a way to just turn off those feelings, then I kind of lose my free will. Now I'm robotic because I'm just kind of like, I have this thing that we found the formula on how to trigger the right chemical to just have you feel good all the time and never have to worry about any of the stuff that's happened and never have to heal from it because you don't need to. It's just this little trigger that says you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. And you're just basically walking around like a zombie at that point. I don't know how healthy that will be. To the point, we'll just be like,
why don't you just Like,
I don't see us ever ending people being flawed, and people being flawed will raise children and raise them in all kinds of crazy bad ways. And you'll have, I can't quite get my head around that of, everything just being, some super future utopia where, nothing's ever wrong, but because,
Tullio made a really great point, though, that a lot of what has defined us as humans and has defined society is the challenges and traumas that we're able to overcome. If we take that away from ourselves, then we are ultimately taking away our ability to find our purpose, because we find purpose in the challenges that we overcome. Now, this is getting a little deep, right? If we take, so there, I know there's a philosophy that was spoken. Again, I could probably do some research on it. But there was this topic of, imagine if we lived in a hedonic machine where every day it was just easy, you push a button, you feel the pleasure, and so on. The argument that was made is that would actually depress you, and life will no longer be pleasurable, right? So if life is like, if you're dealing with a problem or a challenge and the robot could solve that problem for you, and you're not able to learn through that problem, then ultimately you may run into those issues of meaning and purpose of your existence. Now, obviously, there are those who have higher consciousness and could leverage the AI because they are, maybe let's just say they're in a better mental state or in a better emotional state or in a better spiritual state, and they understand how they could work with this AI. But as of right now in today's society, we have a massive problem with mental health. And it's a lot of people who have issues with meaning already. And imagine and a lot of times those who recover become that impactful person. But people are still challenged with that. Now you take away their ability to solve their own problems. What will that do to society?
Yeah, it should be interesting. I think a lot can be done with AI as it relates to improving healthcare, improving many, many things. Even when it comes to like agriculture, problems that are human created. Most problems are human created. I think there's a lot but there's certain things that I think only DI can do. Divine intelligence.
That's right.
And it's like there's going to be a moment where it's like the consciousness, the default, the evil inclination, as many sages call it, right? That's not going to be cured by AI. But it'd be nice to be able to, care for some things that are causing early distress for people, early demise to people, and this diseases people die from in certain parts of the world just because they don't have access to care too. So accelerating that would be wonderful. Even poverty, that's a man-made thing. That probably would go away if it was managed differently without all the greed and all that, right? Poverty is a man-made thing. There's enough resources in this world that shouldn't even exist. But what created it is the mental state, right? I don't think it's going to solve the person who might be greedy.
Tullio, let's jump into what he says about economic development and poverty.
Yeah. So he says that overall, he thinks that in 5 to 10 years, that's a reasonable timeline for a good fraction, maybe 50% of AI-driven health benefits will propagate to even the poorest countries in the world. That's a great idea. That would be solving a big problem. And then he talks about how AI has the potential to accelerate economic growth in developing countries with the promise of drastically reducing poverty. I was just talking about that. Now, by optimizing things like agriculture, manufacturing, health, AI can be used to unlock opportunities for economic expansion. Imagine like faster distribution of medical interventions or more efficient agricultural practices where there's less waste, right? Or making food and healthcare more accessible faster. And so in his model, in Dario Amodei's model and his vision, AI could lift billions of people out of poverty, just by raising living standards, improving access to essential services, and increasing productivity across the globe. And this is possible today, but the corruption doesn't allow it. So there's always going to be the challenge. There's the challenge of corruption, weak institutions, inequality can slow down the impact of AI, so people can hold it back for greed, or Yet with the right focus, AI could create a future where even the most impoverished nations can share in the benefits of advanced technology. And his envisioning is that a scenario where the developing world would experience unprecedented economic growth, possibly reaching 10-20% annual GDP if they leverage AI effectively. I mean, let's think about the progress we've made from the agricultural age to the industrial age. Okay, the agricultural age lasted like 10,000 years. Okay, and then the industrial age, like in 400 years, the amount of progress we've made is tremendous. And in the past 20, 30 years, just in the information age, we have accelerated that much faster. So, and there is more access in more countries, even, for example, where you don't have the limitation of infrastructure for telecom. You don't have to run cables. You use satellites or antennas to communicate with mobile phones. So now that's made it possible to deploy telephony in parts of the world that wasn't possible. So I really believe with the technological advancement that there are certain countries that will leapfrog where they are to either potentially even be ahead of some modern countries, like even here in the US, because with the right use of these technology resources, there's really no reason for these things to exist, these problems to exist. So they're just poorly managed, but with the right genius, intelligence, and motivation, without the greed, the ego, and all that other stuff that gets in the way, I think it's very possible that we could see significant improvements in especially underdeveloped countries.
You know, I have to agree that when it comes to practical matters such as that is totally a possibility. I mean, just seeing how teams have scaled, how production has just sped up, I think countries that are early adopters in the AI age that we're in, to your point, they are going to leapfrog. All the practical things that AI could leverage data and solve problems faster than we can. They could take processes that we already have or countries that have already run and run it through the AI, right? I wouldn't even be surprised when it comes to government matters down the road, where, you know, they're saying, hey, based on this data, what is the best solution? AI gives all the options and they determine from there, right? Where instead of us all thinking, putting our heads together, hey, let's run with an AI that's 500 times smarter than us. And right now it's 500 times smarter with the 4.0. Imagine when it's at the 5 point, where they're talking about it should be sentient at that point. That kind of collaboration with an AI that could just leap countries and GDPs off the map would be.
Yeah. So Ash, you mentioned the governance area. So this is one of the areas he talks about there is peace and governance, and he has some worries on this, and I think most of it that's due to, especially in the it's October 2024 right now. We have no idea what's going to be happening by this time next month. But what does he say here in this area?
Well, he says, unfortunately, I see no strong reason to believe AI will preferentially or structurally advance democracy and peace in the same way that I think it will structurally advance human health and alleviate poverty. Human conflict is adversarial, and AI can, in principle, help both the good guys and, here it is, the bad guys. If anything, some structural factors seem worrying. AI seems likely to enable much better propaganda and surveillance, both major tools in the autocrat's toolkit. It's therefore up to us as individual actors to tilt things in the right direction. If we want AI to favor democracy and individual rights, we are going to have to fight for that outcome. So again, he continues, my current guess at the best way to do this via an entity strategy, correct me if I use it, entente strategy, in which a coalition of democracies seeks to gain a clear advantage, even just a temporary one, on powerful AI by securing its supply chain, scaling quickly, and blocking or delaying adversaries. Access to key resources like chips and semiconductor equipment. This coalition would, on one hand, use AI to achieve robust military superiority, the stick, while at the same time offering to distribute the benefits of powerful AI, the carrot, to a wider and wider group of countries in exchange for supporting the coalition strategy to promote democracy. Now
that's a lot of everyone's worries, and we're trying to deal with it right now with you see mass propaganda on social media, and you see these deep fakes and people trying to figure out how to deal with those. and AI is only going to get more and more effective out of making something look real that, never happened. And if you got bad actors in the mix.
I agree with his assessment. I mean, even the good book says man has dominated man to its detriment in the beginning of time. So unfortunately, it's not going to eradicate the desire for dominance, which is this thing that gets in the way of all progress.
Yeah.
It's just like, how can I use this to dominate markets? How can I use this to be better than every other country on the planet? Versus how can we use this to just unite and fix their problems,
Unfortunately, consciousness is very much the large center of the consciousness of gravity is still in like those dominator hierarchy modes, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where the bulk of it is. And so are people going to use this for all kinds of stuff? Yeah, like, if you've got some authoritarian regime and now they've got the most advanced propaganda and surveillance and everything mixed in there, they're only going to be much more effective at controlling people than you could have been 20, 30 years ago, I think. So I don't know, it's probably our biggest challenge.
Yeah, this sounds like a very eerie sci-fi movie. I mean, we're here worried about fighting with the AI, but imagine us fighting each other with AI. It's just kind of never thought about it from that angle, right? But to your point, imagine if, back in the day, early, 1940s, Hitler had access to AI, and his intentions were with the world. Those kinds of individuals, unfortunately, because of history, things like this, every few hundred years, they repeat themselves, right? Just because something hasn't happened yet. People like that they're going to come back.
That's the problem, is where you have like Hitler's consciousness, but you have technology that's much more advanced from that, and then leveraging it. That's ultimately
straight Age of Ultron here. That's what's going to happen.
It's the biggest problem, I think, personally. Yeah. But
the reality is, with the right use, we could absolutely achieve self-governance. If over time people felt that they had equal access to everything that anyone else does, because that's what technology can do, what AI can do, right? So there's no lack. Lack is what creates problem, right? So if I have lack, then I have to work harder, I have to fight for something, or I end up going the other direction, the need to dominate, so I will never experience lack, right? But somebody else will, as long as it's not me. But if the desire is to not have lack, we could get to a place where I don't need to fight for anything. I have the infrastructure, the technology, everything's in place to make everything fair and equitable. And it could happen. But, hopefully the newer generation will let go of some of the older generation thinking of dominance. But, again, it's been around for thousands of years. It hasn't happened yet.
And on the note of, when we talk about propaganda, deep fakes, we look at scenarios that have occurred that have triggered mass protests, moments in time where something we saw on the television screen started wars, or in this case, more recently, started protests that, divided our country. Now, with these tools, being able to use these tools that could cause and disrupt, especially countries that might not have access to information as fast as we do, where we could verify right away if we're seeing something that's real, which is, again, another scary thing. Imagine watching news and television. Now you don't know what's real or what's not, right? Now I have to double verify everything. And if certain countries want to control that and control information, they're able to do that. What are your thoughts on propaganda and how this could be used?
Yeah. Well, I also think because of the technology, the power isn't just in the hands of big entities anymore. So just the same way they could be ill intent and nefarious individuals that can take advantage of it for purpose of dominance, they could be also highly consciously involved individuals who care more about the benefit of humanity, who could use it for that purpose too. So I think it's going to be a war of between these two consciousness, and ultimately there is a bit of an equalizer that AI is going to bring to the table. I don't think one government will have more power over another, because that's the thing about AI. It democratizes everything. So we just need to have more of the good guys pushing for the loving grace, machines with loving grace, which is what we're title of our topic here. Like, the more of that being pushed, I think that's positive propaganda, if you want to call it propaganda. It's really just evangelizing that we could do good with this. It doesn't have to be used the way it's been, way technology has been used in the past, which is a way of dominating, right? So, we just evangelizing that and get more people to get on board with that.
It's funny. I'm now starting to see that George Lucas was probably prophesying the future of the Empire against the rebels, right? And it's a battle of consciousness when you really think about it.
Yeah.
We talk about the Jedi. I mean, that's so funny. How you think about all these movies, that these are all prophecies of what things could look like. But yeah, to your point, a battle of consciousness looks like a really great sci-fi movie.
Resistance is not futile.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I guess I'll be in some swamp somewhere hiding from when I'm age 150 or whatever.
I'll carry you the wise man on stage.
Yeah, I mean, and that was one of the things too he said about the aging thing. It was even when we get to like 150, I mean, we're probably going to figure stuff out from there. So yeah, we'll all be little Yodas,
Yeah, exactly.
Running around. So on the interesting side of this governance topic, he does say something that I could see just very practical and helpful right now. He says, quote, "There's a clear opportunity for AI to be used to help provision government services such as health benefits and social services that are in principle available to everyone, but in practice often severely lacking or worse in some places than others. This includes health services, the DMV, taxes, Social Security, building code enforcement, and so on. Having a very thoughtful and informed AI whose job is to give you everything you are legally entitled to by the government in a way you can understand, and who also helps you comply with often confusing government rules, will be a big deal." And I absolutely think we're not very far from that. But yeah, you go into any of these government sites trying to figure out how to navigate your way through there. It's just a mind-numbing exercise, and it feels almost intentional at times. There's no love built into any of those systems.
No. And go back to practical matters. I genuinely believe it will solve those problems for us. Of course,
Think about the level of personalization you can accomplish with AI, even in healthcare, right? Rather than, you kind of, when you buy your healthcare insurance or benefits, it's a package. It's the same package for everyone. You have 3 or 4 different choices, but it's pretty much the same thing for everyone. So there's a lot built into something that I may not even need, and there's not enough built into something that I do need. With AI, things could be personalized even at that level. I could package the kind of healthcare that's specific to what my needs are. And that could reduce costs because now you can focus the kind of benefits to the individual, and so many different things that can be accomplished that way too, even with diets. The kind of food that work for me that don't work for you. I mean, just so much can be personalized so there's not wastage, and things can be very tailored to the individual at scale. I mean, that's an opportunity actually. Even for companies that are just purely focused on profit, you can leverage that to create tailored, personalized solution, and in the end, have a better handle on what gets spent and invested in what based on the needs of many people. Because there's a lot of people very healthy who don't use insurance at all, so they have this big package that could be, when money could be sent to where it's needed the most, and it's not equitable right now. It's like one size fits all, because there's no technology to manage it otherwise.
I feel your pain as we're going through the enrollment periods right now. Insurance and driving people crazy. So one area he dives into work and meaning. We discussed this a little bit earlier, but worth noting, he doesn't really discuss here AI and creativity. So AI's potential impact on the arts and creative industries and areas where creativity intersects deeply with meaning and culture. And I think he that's one part that I know a lot of people are worried about as far as their meaning in life and their purpose, and suddenly seeing AI being able to do some very unique things. Obviously there's a lot of we're pretty far from that at the moment, but it's getting better literally by the month. And
yeah.
he's like 5 to 10 years from now, when you've got this sort of super powerful AI in the mix, it'll be crazy.
I kind of look at it like, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go for it, Tullio.
I was going to say, I kind of look at it the way pilots on an airplane used to be. They actually had to fly the plane back in the day, right? Now they're just basically babysitting AI piloting the plane. They're just sitting there making sure nothing goes off. The planes, they might be pushing some buttons once in a while. If it's a small plane, they're checking the pitch wheel to make sure the plane keeps climbing. Otherwise, it goes straight down. I mean, the inputs are very limited. So they're basically babysitting the technology, right? So did it put them out of a job? No, you still need a pilot and a co-pilot in there. You still have them there, but their function changed, right? So they're more of a supervisory, making sure everything's going smoothly. I think ultimately where it's going to come down to is that so the work, in other words, the work that they're doing, if it's an 8-hour flight, yes, they're sitting there for 8 hours, but it's not like they're doing this for 8 hours, flying for 8 hours. It's exhausting, right? So even with the way we will work, we will have machinery and AI that will facilitate a lot of the bulk work, even a lot of the bulk thinking, but we still have to guide it and still be there, and there still be a role for human beings, but we get to be a lot more creative with our time and not, spend countless hours doing things that would be considered minuscule or boring, because we have a co-pilot that can help us through all that stuff. So I think ultimately it's not so much what can we automate and remove humans as it is more how can we create better quality of life, better outcome, produce more, and give people access to maybe more flexibility. Who says we have to work 40 hours a week to accomplish everything we do? Maybe we need to only work 30 hours. And with AI, we can accomplish the same as if we were working 80 hours. There's some of us already doing that. So it's just we have to rethink some of the old norms on how we approach this, I think. And that's going to be the biggest challenge. It's not the technology or what it can do, what it can't do, as it is the mindset and how long it takes to change the mindset, even like I was raised a certain way, and most of those things I had to let go of because I didn't want to I learned that doesn't work with my children, right? So it's like, well, I was raised that way. That doesn't mean it was right. It was what they had, the tools they had. So all that requires time and consciousness and that adaptation. I think AI can showcase faster the need for that, but we still have to deal with the fact that we as humans don't move as quickly as AI does. So that's going to always be a challenge. So rather than create a competing scenario, create one that's symbiotic and works.
Tullio, he kind of mentions to your point about like having more time, so he mentions like in a world where AI handles most of these economic tasks, people might find fulfillment in pursuits that were once considered secondary. So art, relationships, personal growth, community building. So all these things you'll be able to have more time for. And we've kind of talked about that in the past on some of our other podcasts about, the future of work. Will you have like one day of the week where you're really working on just personal growth sort of efforts because, maybe you've got AI and all these things helping you in there, and you want to work on more of that self-actualization or becoming better at learning more at what your job is and that kind of thing. So he does say that, I think we're going to have more time for all of that. When I saw the essay and I'm looking at it, and there was a section, work and meaning, finding purpose in an AI-driven world. This is one I just bounced right to. This is going to be great. Perfect. I want to read what he says here. And then I was a bit disappointed. And he says, I think this question is more difficult than others. I don't mean that I'm necessarily more pessimistic about it than I am the other questions, although I do see challenges. I mean that it is fuzzier and harder to predict in advance. So it was like, there wasn't as much meat to this one. And I'm like, this is kind of stuff we've been talking about and trying to figure out, where the future of business and purpose and all that's going to. And it is a little bit.
I think the challenge for predicting this is that My opinion on the matter is I genuinely believe that AI can enhance consciousness for someone who is already on the path towards consciousness, or in terms of enhancing their consciousness. Someone who's completely unaware of anything spiritual or anything that involves self-worth, let's just say there is an individual who's struggling with those areas. They're nowhere, let's just say they're in a different area of their consciousness. I don't think AI could pull that person into that unless they're already on the path. So even in creative endeavors, I believe, like, for example, I'm able to collaborate with the AI in my music production. I'm able to go ahead and ask it specific questions, which has sped up my learning process. And I'm even able to engage with it on FX audio, where if I, for example, want different variations of what it would sound like if I did this effect, I'm now able to pick, where the normal process is you go down a list, and you hear a sound, then you hear another sound, and you do this all day, pretty much in music production, just boop, 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 and you try to find the right sound. Well, AI is able to speed that up. So if you're working and collaborating in a symbiotic way, it could actually enhance your creativity and give you options without having to deal with all the tediousness. But then going back to consciousness, if you're already on a path towards consciousness, I believe the AI can definitely engage with you in ways that can enhance, maybe solve some of those. Yeah, go ahead.
What's interesting about that you said about that on that path of consciousness, one of the things that they've found is that if you know there is a path of consciousness, if you see that there is a developmental path and there's this stage, this stage, this stage, this stage, then you're much, much, much more likely to get on a path to begin with. So as soon as you become aware of that,
Right.
So like if AI, it knows that part of this is making you aware that there is a path. And then as soon as you're aware of that, then, that AI coach kicks in, or, whatever your interest kicks in, it'll start getting you on that path and making it much more efficient. And I would say in much quicker in moving you along that consciousness path than in the past.
That's a great point.
You said something, Ash, that got me thinking. There was a phase in my life where I was digging into existentialism and neo-thinking and a lot of the Ayn Rand.
This is a whole nother podcast, Tullio. This is
the irrational mind is part of our limitation. What AI is doing is they're removing irrationality out of the equation and showing us from a rational, logical point of view. So I think it can train us to reduce the irrationality so that we can begin to see how things could work. And that's probably what he's saying. I don't know. This is very fuzzy because we do have a lot of irrationalities in how we process them. That's because we feel. We're not just logical creatures. We feel. So, but I can see now, it's like, oh yeah, that made sense. Like how's that possible? Like AI could potentially introduce the contrast where we can start to say, okay, this is how I feel, but this is the rational, logical way. How can I get there? Maybe ask AI to that personal life coach, like, how can you help me bridge this feeling versus the logic of
It'll be like a good salesperson understanding what your objections are before you even
there you go.
before you know it.
There you go.
All right, that's it for the show today. Thank you everyone for listening. Tune in tomorrow. We've got our next 10-minute Business Empathy Expansion Kit episode, and Thursdays we are live with our guests. We've had some excellent conversations with a wide range of business leaders. Until then, we will see you on the next Bliss Business Podcast.